Welcome to In the Business of Healthy Masculinity with myself, your host, Gary Turner, and I'm super excited to welcome my good friend, affectionately known as the listener, Colin Smith from Dexterity Solutions. Oh, welcome, my friend. I'd really love you to introduce yourself. And before we jumped on, you had some beautiful insights over the weekend. So the floor's over to you. A little bit about you, Colin. And,
Thank you, Gary. I'm delighted and honoured to be here and for this to be your first podcast in this series. I think the way I would describe my work today is really pushing back and going in the opposite direction to everything else that's going on. One could say the masculine energy of speed, going further, faster, harder, rather than slowing down, noticing, listening, being with each other, is a very different world. And it doesn't mean that the opposite is wrong, but I think if we could add some of the work that I'm doing, some of the work you're doing into the organizations, I think we'd see a huge transformation. And I often say with my listening work that if the world just listened 1%, 2%, 3% better, we'd have more harmonious relationships. So that's my sense of things. For me, it's I'm in the third chapter. I have the grey hair. Or sorry, not third chapter, third half of my life. First was in IT. I worked at a computer bureau. I understood how systems, computers worked and communicated. The second half was working for a wonderful consultancy, quite small, but it was all about people and process, but essentially how people worked and how they communicated. And now in the third half, and thanks to a lovely lady called Julie Bryant, we came up with the idea of the listener. And it was her who pointed out that I was a very good listener. And I joined all the dots and went back. I thought that's why I did what I did in the past and how I did it. So I was listening then and didn't realize. And that's what's so lovely about where I'm at now, is I think this work I'm doing is divine work. I think it's inspired. It feels like my gift to the world and to be in service to the world. And I look at the work I do in three areas. One is that, and the most important, I think, people want to feel heard, and they don't. They want to be heard. They want to feel valued. They want to know that they matter. And the second is, and again, you've experienced this firsthand, Nancy Klein's work, Time to Think. So the second part is that or any of our attention on the other enables them to feel able to think more deeply, independently for themselves. And so as you and I have done many times, as we're walking together and one's talking, and you hold that space, you let that moment linger longer, and then the person talks again, or you might add the phrase of, and that's interesting, and what more? And then the third area is people realize that they're very good at hearing, but not very good at listening. And one could say that hearing is the masculine side of it. Yeah, got to get this done. Yeah, I know what I need now, off. But listening listens to what's going on underneath it. And when we do listen further, listen more deeply, people share more. And you've experienced it, I'm sure, in your work, and as I have in mine, if you encourage them to talk more, usually they'll lean forward and they'll say, you know, Gary, I've never told anyone this. And out it comes. And from a business perspective, they may say something like, let me shut the door a minute. I shouldn't tell you this, but this and this and this and this is going on. You need to be aware of it. So they're the three things I work. I call myself the listener, and I think my question really is, when was the last time you felt really heard? Or when was the last time somebody said to you, what do you think? I'll leave it there.
Oh, well, I've already got tingles, Colin, as always, when we have a conversation. I mean that because so much of what you just shared in less than 5 minutes, I can almost guarantee that many, in particular men within senior, powerful positions within business, have never had what you just shared in their life, whether they're 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years old.
Yeah.
Like, it's so counterintuitive to how businesses operate. Yet when you look at the global Gallup, the global engagement company, they just released the global 2025 state of the world report, state of work report. Global engagement sits at 21%. So that means 79 pence in every £1 spent on salaries is either wasted or is ineffective. And what you just described for me, Colin, that's just insane, right? That's absolutely insane.
Yeah.
And what would the possibility be? How much more value would a business get per person, per discussion, per product innovation, per collaboration if they just modeled just a bit more of that listening space that you offered?
Yeah. The story of the CEO walks into the board and says, hi guys, we've got a real problem, and then tells them what he thinks or she thinks they should do, and they will agree with him. There's a surprise. Or the other one who comes in and says, hey guys, we've got a real problem. I'm paying you all a lot of money. I need to know what each and every one of you thinks, and we're going to make sure everyone's voice gets heard. And should the decision that's made be the same as the CEO's, the good CEO doesn't accept that. He just says, thank you, John, for that idea. That's the one we're going with. He doesn't need to. He's the CEO. And just on a couple of things that we picked on right at the beginning, one of them in particular, culture is shaped and reshaped by the way we talk and listen to each other. That's what it's about, talking and listening to each other. And I would go further to say it's the way we talk and listen when we are being with each other. We talk at, we hear from, we listen to, we be with, and we just be. And most of the world revolves around those first two. The moment we step into the being elements of it and listening, things change. The energy changes. Everyone settles. And it goes on. Every conversation everywhere, every conversation everywhere either opens the door to transformation or quietly closes it. And how many moments have we had that situation where through the talking and the listening, or the lack of listening, it's like, what's the point? I'm checking out. And the point you made about the Gallup poll area, how many of them are dissatisfied? They're quietly shutting the door on the company, or the company is quietly shutting the door on them.
Oh, it's so potent, and I love where how you brought this listening edge straight away to the topic of healthier masculinity, right? And I want to, of course, be constructive on this platform as well. So I want to put myself in the shoes for a moment of the powerful, well-paid CEO, senior leader, probably more likely a man still, but could be a woman that's taking on hyper masculine traits to survive.
Agreed.
I wonder. I feel like, I hope they watch this and they receive the invitation you're offering. But what might be some of the blocks in your experience and expertise over time that might stop a senior leader or a CEO allowing themselves to listen? I wonder what pops up for you in that moment.
Oh, it's all this soft skills, touchy-feely nonsense. It's a dog-eat-dog world. We've got to get out there and do it. And if I'm correct, a few years back during I think it was the Euros, and I can't remember the guy's name. He was the manager of the England football team, but he employed a psychologist to get all of the players talking and listening to each other, being vulnerable, sharing their fears, concerns, and all of those things. Bear in mind, these are youngsters, in their 20s, right?
Mm-hmm.
Scary what that must be like as a 20 plus. Yeah. I mean, even in my peak, it would be scary to go and play for the country, right? So what they did is they got them to understand more about each other. And they started playing for the team, not their name on the back. So here is a very hyper masculine sport. And I know women are coming into it, which is wonderful. But essentially, it's a team sport, us against the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
And here is someone doing something very different. And the impact on that was huge. They started enjoying what they did. They started playing together as a team, rather than you don't fit, you don't belong. So that's one story. Or two aspects of it. It was a story of somebody I met recently, and he's a senior business person and very good at fixing things. It's a masculine trait. And he was talking about him and his wife, and she often comes to him with problems. And he said, as soon as she arrives, I've got a job to do. I know I'm going to be fixing something. And I said, why not think about not saying anything, not trying to fix, and just listening? And he said, okay, what will happen? I said, she'll continue talking. And when you don't respond or try and fix, she will pause for a moment, and then she'll start talking again. And don't be surprised if he said, thanks, whatever his name is, I've sorted it. Thank you for listening. And he went, okay. Anyway, it didn't take long. 24 hours later, he's calling me, says, you'll never guess what happened this morning. Exactly what you said. I could hear myself wanting to fix, and I could hear you chirping in my ear. I paused. It was about 3 or 4 pauses. But at the end, she said, oh my God, I've got the answer. Thanks ever so much for listening. And he said, it felt like I was doing nothing. It didn't feel masculine. I'm not fixing the problem. But he said, I'm now thinking, how many times do I do that in the office? I can just solve the problem. I don't give them credit for the quality of their thinking. And yet, I always, and it, and I know, we're equal thinkers. Now, we may not be as intelligent as the other. That's not what we're saying. But each of us is capable of thinking if we're given the space to do so. We did an exercise called word association. And because it was a safe environment, I think 9 out of us, when the word was runner, went down the athlete route. Trevor, because he felt safe to say so, something different, said runner bean. Now, it's a trivial example, but imagine that's the organization, and one person, Gary Turner, says, runner bean. And we all go, oh my goodness, none of us have thought of that. That could be the answer, right? So the outlier. Another one is that as a CEO, you're thinking about the business all the time. You'd like to think that your staff are thinking about the business all the time. The reality is they're not, because it's not a safe place to work. They don't encourage my thinking. What's the point? But if somebody came to you with an idea and said, I've been thinking about this at the weekend, or I had this experience at the weekend, and I think it could be interesting for us to have a look at it. If you dismiss it, what's the point? I won't be doing that again. And more likely they'll tell their friends or their colleagues. There's no point in ever coming up with ideas. So the discretionary time and effort doesn't count anymore. On the other hand, you say, wow, that's really interesting. I can't talk at the moment, but let's put some time in, maybe lunchtime or over a coffee later today. I want to hear more about that. I'm already feeling better. Right? I'm excited now. He's interested. He listened to me. And then when they agree to the time and they come to it and they are genuinely interested, you go, okay, right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to investigate this further. So rest assured. And then they do that. And then they come back and then they say, having looked at it and analyzed it all, we decided not to go that way. And you go, no problem at all. I felt heard. I felt my work was being respected, valued. Mm-hmm. I feel valued. I feel that I matter. And so, we think that, fixing is a strength, but actually listening is stronger and requires more courage. Real men don't listen. Well, maybe it's an attractive trait to have. That's my ramblings.
Not at all ramblings. It's really potent though, Colin. There's a few things you've shared me I want to pull together. That last was just beautiful. It takes courage to listen. It takes courage to put someone else first. Yeah. Right? Because, and again, I want to honor our mutual friend, Jane Ted Grant, who's on the Time to Think faculty. She was my teacher in Time to Think, a thinking
and
environment.
My original teacher as well.
So we all know how incredible Jane is. And I just think you also shared earlier around that the power of inviting each person in a space to share their perspective. I remember learning something, I think this was with Jane, it may have been someone else, Colin, but the power of going around in a circle, whatever the meeting looks like, give yourself permission. It could be a square table, a round table, whatever, but make a point of giving everyone 30 seconds to share their perspective, even if they say pass. They may not have something they want to say, but give them the opportunity to say something as part of that round. And then you do a second round just to make sure they really didn't want to say anything.
Yeah.
And so your meeting suddenly goes away, as you say, from being this top-down dictator with love. Yeah. This is what this meeting's about. Let's drive to that end. Yeah. To let's get there still. We're absolutely going to get to that end. But what's all the juice and the possibility that might emerge as we get there? So the journey of getting to there completely shifts because you're going through this listening lens rather than this ultimately control lens.
Yeah.
Right. And it takes courage to relinquish control. Right. Particularly us men. We've all been conditioned by the system to be in control. So this is a real gift. Like I see what you're offering to us today is listening as a bridge to relinquish control. Yeah. But still feel empowered, still feel powerful, right?
We're still going to get it done. But it's that beingness before the doing that makes the difference.
So beautiful.
The example of a call center person who's could say very similar words when speaking to a client. But if they understand about empathy, if they understand about listening, compassion, care, kindness, the way it comes through their doing, as in doing their job, feels different to the recipient. It has a very positive impact on the recipient. And if we did more of that, maybe we'd have more harmonious relationships. Why? There's nothing wrong in conflict or butting up against each other. The way we do it is where it's been wrong. It's more about, I'm bigger than you, I'm right, you're wrong. I'm the boss, you're not, I'm right, you're wrong. Rather than we're equals. And so in that circle you talk about, which as an aside, I run events like that twice a month. I call it under listening matters, because listening matters. And there's three parts of it. For me, one is have people in pairs first, so they can kick around their ideas. They get used to thinking their ideas. Then they share them in the round. Pass is a good option. There's also another one, which I've only literally just found out about. So it's your turn, Gary. And you call for 30 seconds of silence. All right. And then you pass your metaphorical stick on to the next person. And then we talk about, after that round's complete, we do the next round, which is freshest thinking. What's coming up for you now? And the other is when you sit in a circle, you sit in a way that each person can turn to the right and to the left and see the eyes of the other person. And Nancy Klein in I Think It Was Time to Think talks about a session where she was facilitating. And it was a really heated, not heated. It was a very, very important time about how long it would take for the production of the product to come through. And all eyes were on the operations director. But when it came to his turn, he got up, he walked to the window, and all the eyes were on him. So whenever he looked back, he could see everyone genuinely listening and interested in where he may go with his thinking. And he came back and he sat down and he said, now that I've really thought about it, note the really thought, I think we can do it in 4 months. And everyone went, oh my God, thank God for that. Because they all thought it was going to be 6. But he realized, he said, I know what I can do now, because the energy is settled. It was present. He was able to think because his stress, fight or flight, had settled down. He was actually able to think more clearly. Whereas typically in those meetings, he's high anxiety, stress. You can't think in those places. So there's, oh gosh, like you, when I experienced the Time to Think training and also the books, why aren't we teaching this everywhere? What's your freshest thinking now, my friend?
Wow, my goodness. I love that you shared around that as an alternative to the past, a call for silence. That really hit me quite hard, because
Me too.
Workplaces, spaces, it really is that old adage, right? Time is money. So it really is a case of, if you're stopping and just giving blank space, vacant space to something, that's a waste of time and money, surely.
Somebody can fill it.
But really, right? And
Yeah.
I think I love how this conversation's weaving. If I go back to that Gallup report, which is one of many, right?
Yeah.
What is the interplay? And I know there will be one, right? It's sort of correlation rather than causation. But ultimately, if you're losing 79 pence of every pound in real terms, right?
Yeah.
Imagine how that might be topped up if you have spaces of listening.
Yeah.
Right? Like there has to be a correlation, or causation. Sorry, there's without a doubt a correlation, but I'm very sure there's a way to do research, and maybe that's also part of my freshest thinking, is to what extent should there be research, if it doesn't exist yet, I haven't found it, around healthy masculinity, listening, softer skills. Like, what does that
Yeah.
even look like? How do we evidence the value of creating spaces for particular men leaders, but all of us, to slow down, to listen, to practice and role model everything we've been discussing so far? Like, when we can tie this evidentially to better outcomes, which I'm sure some of this would have been done. I'm sure it's not new.
Sure.
But there's fresh thinking for me around, does that exist? If it doesn't, should we be doing it? Who would we do it with? So
Yep.
that's some of my freshest thinking, actually, is, yeah, because we know that, and again, I want to honor as well, Colin, none of what we're discussing here, the reason I chose healthy masculinity as a focus in this platform is because toxic masculinity is a negative. Language matters, right? Carries energy.
Yep.
And,
Agreed.
and toxic masculinity immediately says that all men are bad,
Yeah.
or the social
Yes.
construct of masculinity makes all men bad, which isn't the case. As we do know from evidence that violence against women and girls is mainly a men's issue. We do know that
Yeah.
violence in workplaces and organizations is mainly a men's issue, right? So that is part of this journey as well, is to be honest and truthful around where some of the root causes are.
Yeah.
However, I don't blame all men for that. I blame a system of unhealthy masculinity
Yes.
that we are trying to challenge through this platform.
Agreed. We've been programmed.
Yes.
I don't know if you saw it, and that's what I love about this conversation, and thank you for the way you're hosting it, by the way, is I don't feel any stress, and therefore these things keep arriving. All right. And it was a Heineken advert, right? Obviously beer, very masculine. And what they've done is the advert went out for people to have extreme positions on things.
Mm-hmm.
So it might be pro-abortion, against abortion. Gosh, what am I thinking? Hanging, not hanging, that sort of thing. And so they did it very quietly. It wasn't a big deal, but they got this group of people together and they paired them up, the opposites. But they didn't tell each of them that they were opposite in this area. So the first thing is they had to create, using flat pack furniture, they end up creating a bar and 2 stools. And they went, this took them about an hour because they were helping each other. Some of the pieces were bigger, etc., etc. And then it said, go to the cupboard, and in there was a couple of beers, right? And the question is, now go and stand in front of this screen. So they had a particular place to stand. And they were shown the 2 videos of these 2 people. So now I've really got on with you I'm now looking at you as a mate. I've enjoyed building this together. We've talked about all sorts of little stuff because we've never met each other. And now you're pro-abortion and I'm dead against it. And the question at the end is, do you want to leave or do you want to sit down and have a beer and talk about it? All right. And there was one guy, ex-army, he said, I've had enough of this, I'm out. And then he came back, he said, I was only joking. And he was with a lady, right? And at the end of it, he said, I'd really love to keep in contact with you. I may have to explain it to my girlfriend, but I think we'd have some lovely conversations. All right. So here is 2 people completely disagreeing, and yet they can now have a dialogue about it. That's what we should be doing more, not the way things are in the world today. You either do this or you're out. And also find ways to get you out. It's a crazy, crazy world.
Just honestly, the whole of my head is buzzing, Colin, because I've seen that advert as well. It's incredibly potent, and I'll try and dig it out so I can share it in the show notes of this conversation. But again, I want to thank you for how you communicate and grab the juice and the essence of so many of these different stories that you've shared today, right? None of this is theoretical. And what I was very mindful of as we start to co-create, and we are, right? This platform is a co-created platform. Like, it's never been, I genuinely don't know what's going to come out at the end of this. I just hope it brings insight and I just know, and which is why we're here today, that this conversation needs to happen. and it's not so
Yes.
overtly out there. And I love the story you shared with the Heineken advert and that example, because, just to weave this together, the work you do as a listener, as the listener, as I love you're affectionately called, you cannot, it is physically, in my experience, it is physically impossible to hate another person when you are next to each other in dialogue. It's impossible.
Yeah.
It's impossible, no matter what's going on in your head, no matter what stories you're telling yourself, no matter what your upbringing is or your intergenerational trauma or your challenges. When you're eyeball to eyeball, I've never once been able to be angry at someone, even if I've tried in person.
Yeah.
I don't know what your experience of that, or if you challenge that or have anything else to build.
There was reminds me of my daughter. She said, right, just play this game. And I said, right, okay. So tell me somebody you hate. I said, I don't hate anyone. And she said, come on. I said, no, I don't, genuinely don't. And the only person who ever came to mind was a sales director who made me redundant. And it was like, I'm kind of glad he did. And, even when it happened, it was like, okay, I can get through. I will get through this. And it turned out to be a transformational point. But I could never hate him. But if I genuinely believe that everybody is doing their best they can with the resources, skills, capability, all that environment, etc., that they can. If we could sit down with someone, and I'm reminded now of the story of my friend Joe Berry, whose father, Sir Anthony Berry, was killed during the Brighton bombings of 1986. At that time, Joe was probably in her late teens, early 20s, and said, whatever happens, I must make sure my dad's death is not in vain. There was only one person ever convicted of that bombing or planting the bomb, was a guy called Patrick McGee, member of the IRA. And he went to prison. And as part of the Good Friday Agreements, he was released, I think it was in 2000. And Joe wrote to him a number of times and didn't think anything was going to happen. Eventually he wrote back, or she got a message back saying he'd like to meet her. So she went to Ireland to meet him, and the two of them sat together. There was a friend of hers outside, and for the first hour or so, he ranted and justified why he did what he did. And I'm paraphrasing now, but at that point, Joe just said, Patrick, if I'd had the life you've had, it's entirely possible I would have done what you did. And he says afterwards, he said, her empathy, I was disarmed by her empathy. All right, here is someone who's done the very masculine things. And here was someone disarming him with a very feminine trait. Having listened to you, it's entirely possible I would have done what you've done. Since then, the two, they've started to get less of this work because of his age now. But they went around the world as a partnership, not in a romantic way, but as a partnership, teaching peace and forgiveness or reconciliation. And so you had, in one particular case, Palestinian and Israeli families in the same room together. And after this, they were hugging each other because both of them had lost loved ones. And you go, we can do that. We can do this everywhere, right? So I believe, if I believe what I believe, I could sit down with some monstrous people and have a conversation with them and see through the facade and see the human being struggling underneath.
It's so potent, Colin. And I've got I would say a less dramatic, but as significant example, which is I'm quite politically active myself in my local area, nationally and here in the UK. And I've made a point of having lunch with two of what would be deemed my complete foes,
Love
i.e.
it.
Reform
Yep.
UK.
Yes.
Two councillors from Reform UK, who on paper would be absolutely the last people I should ever be talking to. And I've had lunch with two different guys, and I've got very different views. Like you said with the Heineken advert, one might be pro-abortion, might be anti-abortion. I might be pro, equality. Someone else might be only care about growth and extraction, right?
Yeah.
But whatever those narratives or stories are that they believe, I believe, the space in between, there was 80% commonality. We cared about the community. We care about better infrastructure. We care about there being still protected green spaces. Now, I'm wildly opposed to some of that, what he believes and what his party represents.
Yep.
But he, for that 1 hour over lunch, was equally human as I was. And what he goes to do with his life is not on me, and vice versa, right?
Right.
But that space, the fact we heard and saw each other for the human we were, and I can tell you, Colin, honestly, it didn't go down well in certain quarters because
yes,
what was I doing speaking to the enemy? So I just wanted to thank you for bringing that up, because I haven't vocalized that publicly anywhere. And you're holding the space for me in this moment, allowed that to come through in a way that just felt very natural. So we're really role modeling, I hope, for people listening, watching
that's
this
what I
back,
think.
what's possible.
Nancy Klein talks about it, that polarization isn't disagreement, it's disconnection, right? And the reason I suspect that people don't like what you're doing or what they were doing is you could be tainted by, this particular one could be tainted by Gary's views, and you could be tainted by their views. So we'd rather you didn't do that. Well, hang on a minute. That's not the way that things change, because the way things change at the level you're talking about is you're the enemy, you're vermin, you're scum. We have to eradicate you. That's not inclusive at all. And the moment we start othering, as demonstrated beautifully in the US, I hate my enemies. I don't wish them well. Imagine that on the football field. There is, we want to win, of course. And if the other team performs the best they can and we still win, we've raised our game to beat them. And we should respect and thank them for raising their game against us. That, we're missing so much.
And what you're really, for me, honestly, Colin, it's just so beautiful, this conversation, is so if I look at healthy masculinity for me versus what I call unhealthy, and again, I want to honor the point that this is not about either or binary, male, female,
Agreed.
Masculine, unhealthy. Like, we're just trying to piece apart here. What are the behaviors and energies and the ways we behave and show up and act with each other that degenerate or cause harm or other, as you said, versus generative, which is co-creative, energetic, reimagining, powerful together, and individually and collectively, right? And it's the embracing of everything and not pushing anything away, but moving towards, for me, healthier rather than unhealthy, right?
Yeah, agreed.
And it's the blend of energies, right? And I think I just wanted to capture that, because you mentioned it a few times. When we talk feminine, masculine energies, we're really talking about the ability to harness the best of both. We're not saying men are bad, masculinity is bad in and of itself. It's just a social construct. What we're saying here is, are we conscious and aware of how powerful listening can be as an aid of positive change, particularly for men, but for all of us? That's what I'm taking away from our conversation so far.
There's something really important about the equality. We just happen to be traveling in different bodies. That's it. Whether it's a different color skin, environment that we're in, sex or whatever, essentially we're fundamentally the same. And we all And you strip it all away and you're left with that fundamental need. We all want to be seen and heard, loved and love. Love another and be loved. And one could say that, our dear friend in the US, what he really wants is to be loved. And he doesn't know. He only knows a few ways to get that. And it's to the whatever it is to the other. And yet, being vulnerable. We've talked about this, haven't we, before, about being vulnerable. Be the first to be vulnerable and say, guys, I've no idea what we're going to do now. We're in like COVID. What a difference it would have made. We said, actually, we don't know what we're doing, right? Who does? No one in the world knew what to do. But everyone, said we do know what to do. We've got this. But if they'd started, maybe, I don't know, I'm not a president or a prime minister, but what could have been much better is to be honest. And we're going to find teams of people so that we can evaluate what ideas people are coming up with, as in listening. And we're going to move through this as quickly and as quietly as we can, doing things, trying things. That didn't work. This didn't, and so on. But we're going to keep you informed. We're going to be honest with you. And we do realize that many lives could result as a cost with this happening. But we didn't. We lied, and we made out for that one to be better than others, different rules, different levels, mates. It just, right? It wasn't for the good of the country. It was for the good of the individual. And, we could have, I'm not saying the result could have been different, but the way it happened could have been very different. Because again, I don't know. And, we could have been going down so many routes, like swallowing bleach, for heaven's sake, or whatever. Or even just just staying indoors, wearing masks, washing hands. Right? I don't know.
It's as we start to wrap up our beautiful conversation, Colin, one of the things I just want to just thank you for, again, for me personally, and I hope the listeners and viewers get this as well, is just that absolute crystal value, A, in listening, and B, in slowing down, C, giving yourself permission to feel as well, right?
Yeah.
Because listening's it's an act of feeling as well. And I don't think I've always been so conscious of that there's a real feeling to listening.
Yeah.
It really takes you from living above the neck to really feeling and starting to connect.
Yes.
All of your senses, right? And I just want to say you're always such a wonderful communicator, such a wonderful listener, and an amazing guest. But I feel that your work really is critical right now. It really is critical, Colin. So thank you for all you're doing, mate.
Yeah, thank you. It's that, even if you just sit with the words, as I said earlier, talk at, listen, hear from, listen to, be with, be. And as you start to move those, that's the feeling you're talking about, this sense of everything's starting to settle. And it's likened to a deep dive into the ocean. That's the self journey, dropping and dropping and dropping into that point of stillness. But there's also another journey, which is the external journey, which is the mountain. And as we stand at the bottom, I can see you over there. You're a different color. You've got different adornments, which suggest that our religion is different. You're a different sex, and many other differences. And we keep passing. But as I notice, as we keep passing, as we're climbing, actually, you're more like me. You're more like me, more like me, until you get to the top. And that's the external journey, the being with others. So being with self first, then being with others. And then you're in a place to notice, what on earth are we doing to the world? And this is very much your space. You know, there's so much more we could do if we, I don't know, I think it says it earlier, isn't it? Shaped by the way we talk and listen to each other. That's my thoughts.
Beautiful. Final thought. How do people join you at these listening circles, your listening gatherings? Is there a best way to email? Is there some other way?
Yeah, so email me. They're called Listening Matters because listening matters, and they are matters about listening. And send me the email, which is colin.smith@dexteritysolutions.co.uk. And I run them twice a month. The one that's happening tomorrow is on boundaries. The first one next month is on listening with intention. And at the end of the month is one on loneliness. And each of them, they're all about experiences. So people get the opportunity to do a thinking pair, and people have the experience of a listening circle. And that's always within the call or the hour itself. And they're free because I want to spread listening more. Final message: listen first. Listen always. Always. Thank you, my friend.
Beautiful. Thank you for joining me, and thank you for being the first brave soul that sets us on the fire of In the Business of Healthy Masculinity. I think we're going to have a fun journey, and no doubt we'll be getting you back on at some point in the future, I'm sure.
Bless. Thank you, Gary. Really appreciate it. You take care.
Love it. You take care too, my friend. And I'm just going to wrap up. You can see the wonderful Colin Smith from Dexterity Solutions. Again, this was In the Business of Healthy Masculinity with your host, Gary Turner. Hope to see you all again soon.